Yeah, okay, so we're in Perek Mem Daled Pasuk Yud, and I think the plan is next week should be the last shir of the season. So I would like to finish Parshas Miketz next week. I'd like to finish Miketz next week. Next week will be our 60th shir on Parshas Miketz. Okay, so in Perek Mem Daled Pasuk Yud, Yosef said to the brothers who had just offered that the one who the Gavia is found with will die, and the rest of them will be slaves. So Yosef said, "Gam atoch edivrechem ken hu, asher yimotzei ito yeli aviratem tiyunikim." So we discussed this last year when we explained the following. The obvious problem with the pasuk is he's telling them, he seems to be affirming what they said and saying, yes, now too it is as you say, but then he makes a different offer, that the one who it's found with will be an Eved and the rest will be free. So we discussed last week the following. They said, your servants, plural, would never do this. The money that we found, we returned to you. So we would never steal. Now that Kal V'chomer proves only that as a group they wouldn't commit this crime. It doesn't prove that Binyamin, who was not part of the original group, wouldn't steal. So he's telling them, as we said this last week, he's telling them, your argument is sound. I accept your argument, which is that clearly you are innocent as a collective. Nonetheless, there's going to be an individual that can be found guilty, and that won't conflict with your argument. That was what we mentioned last time. But what we left open was, okay, that explains how he's telling them, you're right, I accept that you're innocent, and therefore I certainly would never implement that collective punishment that you're suggesting if you weren't innocent, because I accept that you're innocent, right? They were saying, if you find it, then we should all be punished. And he says, no, I know you're not. I accept your argument that you're not collectively guilty for this. Nonetheless, it's going to be an individual who is guilty individually. Okay, so that explains how he accepts the argument, and then he says there's going to be an individual. But what explains that he says he accepts the arguments and therefore he downgrades it to avdos from death? That's not like they said. So I think the answer is very clear, very obvious. That when they said hold die, when they declare death on the person to whom it's found, what gives them a right? Whoever's saying this is saying that assuming it's not every individual, not every pashtus, not every one of them spoke up and said, if I find it, it will be dead, right? Because they said the other guy, they spoke about the third party. Whoever you find it with will die. So it means each one is saying, or one of them is speaking on behalf of all of them, and saying, if you find it with any of the other ones, he will die. Now, what right does a person have to say that the other person should die if you find it with him? What right does one brother have to say his brother, he doesn't own his brother's life? The answer is that when they're saying whoever you find it, you should die, they're talking as a collective. That's basically saying that we are not guilty. Because they're giving their own lives away, because they're assuming that any action any of them did was done with the knowledge of the rest of them. That's their approach over here, that they act as a group, and therefore they're essentially giving away their own life.
But they said the one who found it with will die, and not the rest of us.
Right.
So that's why we're all guilty, because we acted as a group. So
Right.
we should all be unloving.
Right.
Why should the one who we found it will die if we all acted?
Because he's doing the worst. He's doing the most insolent crime of holding on to the
Why
Gavia.
do we have a right to say that? Because if it was any of us, it was one of us, and all of us are saying that our lives are forfeit too.
No, because all of us decided to hide it with one of them, and therefore we all agreed to make that one the fall guy in case he's caught, and the one that's doing the worst crime. Right, but of course they're saying it didn't happen. But how are they saying it didn't happen? Look, if a person says, if you find it on me, I will die, that makes perfect sense. Because, why? Because if it did happen, right, you have to think about the statement in the context of if it did happen. So if a person would say, if you find it on me, I will die, since if it did happen, he can give himself up for death, or declare death upon himself, accept death upon himself. Therefore, it's a way of saying it didn't happen. But if you have no right to condemn your brother to death, so how is it saying anything? It's a meaningless thing.
So whoever you find it with is one of us.
Is one of us, and all of us are complicit because we all decided who to hide it with, because we're all doing this together.
So we're all
So,
both.
right, exactly.
It's kind of like, by the way, it's kind of like in Din and Fashas, the person has to respond to the right Tasra. Say, if you're not allowed to do that, if you do that, you'll die in this way.
Right.
He says, accept.
Right, alpha beacon, right?
I accept that.
Mm-hmm.
I accept the consequences.
Right, right.
They're saying we accept the consequences.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. So they're accepting it because it's them that are being accused. None of them, no one is able to give away. So he says like this, he says, right, I actually accept what you're trying to prove. Right, they're saying like this, they're saying, if one of us is guilty, then we would give ourselves up to die. That particular one, the rest of Avadim, which is, we wouldn't say that if we were, in fact, guilty. So he says, yeah, I know you're not guilty as a collective. But there's going to be a guilt in an individual, because there was an individual amongst you that wasn't tested, and that's Binyamin. And therefore, naturally, he'll be my Eved. Why could he die? There's no right for him to die. He stole and be my Eved. It follows the Meg. The whole death was only there because they're trying to prove their innocence. And he says, I accept that. That's not a question.
And he's saying because your collective doesn't include the one who's never been proven before, who never was
right. Exactly.
And
so
never spoke with you together as
right. He wasn't here. He wasn't part of this whole. He wasn't part of this collective in the event that you're basing your Kal V'chomer on. But also more significantly, he's not part of the collective in a very important way. He's always left behind, and that gets us to a very important question here, which brings us back to Yosef and his brothers. There's a whole question, right? Are you a collective? And that's what's going to happen in the parasha. That's me attention. Will you leave him behind? Right. So what Yosef is aiming for over here is to separate Binyamin from the brothers and to treat him as an individual. And Yehuda's going to push back. They're going to say, okay, we'll all be your avadim, and he's going to say, Chalil Ali, you all go back home, and Vayigesh Elav Yehuda. But that's the test over here. The test over here is it's coming to a head of whether Binyamin is going to be treated as one of the rest of them, as part of the group, or as an individual.
Well, you pointed out before that it's a possibility of reading that he was actually trying to separate him out and say, I don't want my brother with you, so I'll take him off.
Yeah, that could be.
I'll say he'll be my enemy.
Yeah, right.
You go away, and if they
exactly.
for him, he said, oh, in which case,
right.
things have changed.
Right, no, right, so exactly. So there's two options to the story. Right, exactly. So whether Binyamin is going to be treated as one that's separate from the brothers, in that case, then Yosef says, okay, you know what, they still have that same stance of getting rid of me and now getting rid of Binyamin. So it's the same question over here. Are they acting as a group, or are they willing to accept that some of them are not part of the group? And then I'll take Binyamin with me, right? But if they change their stance on that and they somehow insist on including Binyamin, despite the fact that he acts in a way that's inconsistent with them as a group, then that means they're not willing to accept this kind of separation, and then I could rejoin. Exactly.
There's a problem with that one.
Okay, but let's hold. I mean, unless it's only what's crucial questions. Okay, so basically that's the question. There's this fundamental question whether it's a group or it's individuals. And I think we're going back to the Rachel story where Yaakov pronounced death on the one by whom you'll find your gods. So I think now we have to look back, we have to understand in the same light as well. It's not just that Yaakov is sure that Rachel didn't do that, because Yaakov doesn't believe that there's a purpose in stealing the Truffim, and Rachel does. It's that Yaakov doesn't believe that Rachel is going to do something independent of him, because the whole idea of him pronouncing death, I think, based on what we noticed in this story, is that there you could say he's allowed to pronounce death on his wife. Yes, that's how I understood it till now. But now that we're seeing over here, where it's obvious that one brother can't pronounce death on the other brother, but it must be that they're pronouncing death because they're speaking as a group. So that would suggest to me that in that story as well, Yaakov is pronouncing death because he thinks that he speaks for all of them. So that's the machlek. That's the root of the machlekes over there. It's not just that whether it's kedai to steal the truffim. Yaakov is certain that no one would steal the truffim, and Rachel thinks that it is worth stealing the truffim. It's that Yaakov believes that there's no such thing as chilukei deis, among Bnei Yisrael, among his family. That's a concept that doesn't, we don't have descent, and that's the question over here. Can there be descent, or is
that why it's immediately followed by the story of Shem?
Well, it's not quite immediately followed, but
well, it's shortly after followed by Shem, where he says, okay, we'll wait till everyone comes home and we'll act together. And
interesting.
Maybe act without him.
Okay.
Did that.
I hear. All right, let's leave that if it's not important for the Hemshech. Okay, let's go to pasuk Yud Aleph. Now, pasuk Yud Aleph. Vayamahu vayaridu ish es am tachtoi orzo, vayiftechu ish am tachtoi. So, first thing I notice about this pasuk is that it's completely superfluous for the flow of the narrative, right? Typically, you see a pasuk. The pasuk is there because it's necessary for the story to continue. So, but in this case, imagine this pasuk wasn't there, everything would be fine. He says, okay, here's the deal. Whoever I find it with will be an evidence. The rest of them are innocent. And he searched. You can go straight to pasuk Yud Beis. And he searched the details about them lowering the amtachas to the ground. Naturally, the amtachas has to be taken off the donkey. Maybe not even, but naturally it has to be opened. Why does the pasuk have to make a point out of that? Okay, so now Pashat the Vayimahu, the fact that they rushed is indicating they're showing that they're innocent or that they think they're innocent. Okay, but that doesn't solve the problem just because we know that they think they're innocent as well, right? Because we know that it was planted there. So what's this pasuk doing? So I would suggest that what the pasuk is noticed in the pasuk, it says ish es am tachtoi and ish am tachtoi. Each of them is working individually on their amtachas, and the next pasuk we have the same theme of, in pasuk Yud Gimel, Vayamos ish al chamayrai. Each of them put on his donkey. So the pasuk is stressing that they're each operating as their own ish. Okay, so the pasuk is treating them as individuals. So it's telling us till now we're talking to them as a group. They present themselves as a group. Yosef pushed back and said, maybe you're not a group. Maybe we have to think of you as individuals. And boom, the next thing you know, each one does something. And he searches Vayichapis Bagodol Heichel Bakatan Kilo. That's taking us through each member of the family, top to bottom. So no longer treated them as a group. It's not like Vayichapis, right? Well, you could have had Vayichapis in the Amtochos. So let's say we'd skip pasuk Yud Aleph, right? So I would have, if we would have skipped pasuk Yud Aleph, it would have gone like this: Vayichapis Vayimotzi Hagavia Be'antachas Binyamin. So the Bagodol Heichel Bakatan Kilo, I'm suggesting it goes along with the fact that we're treating them separately. And the pasuk is now saying, forget about them as a group, think of them as each one individually. And Yosef then goes through each one individually and he says, okay, Reuven, you're good. Shimon, you're good. Levi, you're good. And by doing it that way, and we'll get to this soon in the next pasuk, that by going from top to bottom, he's isolating the katan for being the youngest. Because it's like saying, look, see, till we got to the youngest, everything was fine. Mashengi, if we would have just randomly found Binyamin, okay, maybe because of Binyamin this, maybe because of that. No, but here it's like saying the problem is with the youngest. So it's like he's threatening the unity of the family, and perhaps the youngest one is going to be left behind because he's the little one, like Yosef was treated as a nar. Okay, we'll get to this. We'll get back to that soon. But the point is that there's a stress over here of them acting as individuals. Okay, and then in pasuk Yud Daled, Vayova Yehuda ve'echov. Here, there's a leadership, and there's a group, Yehuda and his brothers. Why are we mentioning Yehuda and his brothers? It's all of them. Where does Yehuda come in? Because Yehuda is now going to take the initiative in pasuk Zayin, and then of course Vayigesh Elav Yehuda. So pasuk Yud Daled is a certain turning point where they are acting as a group, and Yehuda is going to be the leader of the group. It's not just a bunch of individuals. Okay. Now, besides this Pshat and pasuk, I want you to look at Omos, where it seems pretty clear that the Navi is darshaning this pasuk. So we remember in Omos, Perek Zayin starts from, and then Perek Ches. Perek Ches talks about the klov kayetz, the basket of summer fruit. Perek Zayin talks about the anoch, which we connected to the nechos. Okay, Perek Ches talks about the people that take advantage of the poor and sell him for shoes, and the people that try to corner the grain market, as Yosef did in Mitzrayim, and so on and so forth. Okay, and all these psukim we spoke about so many times. And then pasuk Ches references the Nile River, And pasuk Tes talks about the sun setting Batzaharayim. We mentioned that means the Nevi'im will lose their Nevuah, like Micha says will happen to the brothers. That's the meaning. One of the meanings of Yosef's dreams about the sun and the moon and the stars bowing to him is that it's becoming completely dark. Everything is setting, and darkness is descending on the Nevi'im. And there's going to be mourning for the only son. That's pasuk Yud, and that's taking us back to Yaakov mourning for his son. Okay, and then pasuk Yud Aleph is the Ra'av Ba'aretz, which is really a mashal for a Rav L'Shmaya Dvar Hashem, and that's of course the whole story of the Rav in Mitzrayim is all about the Davar, Vav Shomras a Davar, they're waiting for the Dvar Hashem, which is intimated, sensed in Yosef's dream. Okay, now take a look in Perek Tes. There it says, no one's going to escape Hashem's wrath. Im Yalu Hashemayim Misham Oridem, this is pasuk Beis. If they go up to heaven, I will lower them from there. If they hide on top of the Carmel, Misham Achapes, Ulekachtim. And in pasuk Daled, V'samti Eini Alehem L'Ra'av L'Teva. So here, let's working backwards. Yehuda says to Yosef in the coming parasha, he says, "You said V'asima Eini Olav," right? Mm-hmm. And as Rashi says, "Chizuhi Simas Ayin." You said V'asima Eini Olav, and meanwhile you're out to harm him. So here we have this pasuk in Amos, V'samti Eini Alehem L'Ra'av L'Teva. And of course, the question of Ra and Toiv is central to the whole story of Yosef. We spoke about this in the last few shurim, but he says, Lama Shilamtem Ra'a Tachas Toiva, even though he's the one who started the Ra'ah, because he brought the Dibur Ra. Yosef's whole chiddush is that Toiv and Ra is not what it looks like. You could think something is Toiv, Atem Chashavtem Alei Ra'a, Lakim Chashav Alei Toiv. Okay? So the theme of Toiv Ra is essential to the Yosef story. So he's V'samti Eini Aleim L'Rav L'Toiva. Where does he do that? In this pasuk where he's Mechapes, Bagadol Heichel B'Katan Kila, and that's going back in Perek Tes and Amos there, pasuk Gimel, it says, Misham Achapes L'Kachtem, Hashem's going to seek out your sins and find you, or find the people, the people that he wants to punish. And pasuk Beis says Hashem will bring them down from the Shemayim. So this pasuk it says that they lowered their amtachos and then he searched. They lowered them to the ground. Doesn't it say that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. In this pasuk, Arza, right? So then you look at the pasuk Hey and Vav. It talks about Mitzrayim and the river that overflows the Oretz of Mitzrayim, and Hashem makes the Oretz suffer. So they're being lowered from the heavens. They're right now doing something that's going to force them to go back to the ear, as the next pasuk says, go back to Mitzrayim. They're going to be brought back down to the Oretz, to the low place, instead of going back to Eretz Yisrael. And that's, I think the Navi is reading this pasuk. So the lowering the Amtachas to the Oretz is a symbol to the fact that they are being, even if they could think they could escape Mitzrayim, which is the low place, and go back up to Eretz Yisrael, Hashem is going to bring them down. He's going to be mechapes, and he's going to find them and bring them back. Okay. Because of what they did. Exactly. That says earlier there, because of what they did. And by the way, you have to look weiter there in Perek Tes. Take a look at Perek Tes, pasuk Yud Beis. Hine yamim ba'im no Hashem v'nigash cheresh ba'koitzer. This is how the Medrash Rabbah, beginning of Vayigash, begins with Pash Vayigash. V'nigash cheresh ba'koitzer is Vayigash elav Yehuda. Yehuda is the cheresh, because the pasuk, I forgot which pasuk, and the koitzer is Yosef, because v'hine anachnu ma'almim alumim. So there's going to be a nigash. So that's the nechama that Amos ends with. Right. Why?
Yehuda's bracha.
Anavim, right.
And Yosef is the one again with the grain.
Right. The Medrash talks about that as well. Remember, I think it has a different pasuk. Derachti Yehuda likeshes, maybe that's in Derech Anavim. Yeah. Right. So the Vanigash, Yomim Bam Vanigash is the Nevu of Nechama and Amos, which parallels in this tragedy that's happening here. The resolution is Vayigash Elav Yehuda. Okay. Good. Pasuk Yud Beis. Vayichapes b'gadol hechil v'katoin kilo vayimotzei hagavi'a be'amtachas binyamin. So, why did he start with the gadol and end with the katan? So everyone says, like some of the Farshim say, he didn't want to go straight to Binyamin so that they shouldn't think that he knows where it is. Now, I find this very difficult. First of all, I think it's more suspicious to start with the eldest and end with the youngest, and boom, it's the youngest, L'daiti. But anyways, but also, how does he know who's the oldest and the youngest? Because, right, he showed you. How did he show he knew? That leads to my second question. Yeah, well, it says the Rashi over there because he hit on the Gavia, and he says, Reuven's the Bechor, so he's Menachesh. Because he's Menachesh. 1 second. So that's my question. My question is, as in Pasuk Tesvav, Yosef says to them, don't you know that a person like me is Menachesh? And I'm going to discover the fact that you stole because I am Menachesh, so I am could find things out that you hide from me. And that's how he knew the oldest, the youngest, so why can't he also know where the Gavia is? I mean, it's an obvious question. It's not...
because he doesn't have a stool.
But say that's a different question. But now Pasuk Tesvav, which I think I mentioned this in the previous year, but Pasuk Tesvav, he says, "Lo yadatem ki nachish yenachish ish asher kamoini." So that means he's saying that. So others read it. Some read it this way: that he's saying, "I'll figure out who stole it." I don't have the Gavia. He says, "Ish asher kamoini." It's not about the Gavia. It's a smachi gavra. It's not a smachi like the Gemara on Shabbos. You need a magician and you need good tools. He's saying, I'm the magician. It's not about the Gavia. It's about me. Okay, if you learn like that, and right, then it's problematic. Okay, fine. But I think the pshat is like this. I think the pshat is pashut. The question that Yosef is forcing the brothers to confront once again is what to do with the little one. Once again, because it starts with Rachel. She's the Tzira Lefnei HaBechira, and Yosef is the Nar, the Ben Zekunim, and now there's Binyamin, the little guy, again making trouble. So what he's doing is, like I mentioned before, he's bringing them to think about it as the problems with the Katan, because look, Reuven's the oldest, he doesn't steal. Even Shimon, who's not as old as Reuven, also doesn't steal. It's not you know who's the bad guy? The little one. And by doing it this way, he's making them think of Bilam as evil because he's a little one. So he's forcing them to face that question once again. Okay? Right? And he wants to see the little brother. There's something about the Katan, which brings us back to Rachel, brings us back to Yosef, and that's what's coming to the forefront once again. And in Amos, it says the following. Look at Amos, is in Amos Perek Zayin, which we spoke about Perek Zayin from Pasuk Zayin and on. There's an Anoch, and the Anoch, we said, I think we were suggesting the Nechos is supposed to be a simon for the Anoch, just like the Kluf Kayetz and Periches is a simon, is about the vision that the brothers had when they picked up their eyes and saw. And there it talks about not eating bread. Here, the Nevuah, right? We spoke a lot about these psukim. The context of them eating bread, Mitzrayim with Yosef. Okay, but in the beginning of Perek Zayin, Amos has these other visions. There's a bunch of visions here, one after the other. Perek Zayin, he has a vision in Pasuk Aleph, then a vision in Pasuk Dalet, then a vision in Pasuk Zayin, that's the Anoch, and then again in Perek Ches he has another vision, the Kluf Kayetz. So the Kluf Kayetz and the vision of the Anoch, those are all connected. So I think also we have to go back to the first two visions. And in the first two visions, he sees something terrible is going to happen, and he says, he begs for mercy in Pasuk Beis, Slachna miyakum Yaakov ki kotoin hu. And then in Pasuk Kei, Chadana miyakum Yaakov ki kotoin hu. And then when there's the Anoch, then he can't do anything about it. So the first two decrees he was able to avert by begging for mercy because Yaakov is a koton, but then not when there's an Anoch. Okay, so Metzushtal is that we have this, and then it talks about the Kluf Kayetz and the punishment that's going to come because of their abuse of the Evyim Bavur Na'alayim, which is Yosef, the Nar, the son of Rachel, the Ketana, and so he can no longer ask for mercy for the Katan because of the abuse that they dished out to the Katan, to Yosef. And then the question again is, are they going to do the same thing to Binyamin?
What do you mean that it's Katan?
What?
That it's Katan because he's the younger brother?
Who, Yosef?
No, what do you mean that it's Yaakov ki Katan?
So there's a meat of, yeah, I think so, maybe. Yeah, probably. Yeah, but I think more importantly, which I don't understand fully, which this is, I think, we're getting to some deeper thing over here, which I don't really understand fully, but we're starting it tonight at least. There's this thing about, there's a midah of the katan, a midah of youth. And it's typically a negative thing. What?
So I'm comparing Shem Yaakov and Shem Yisrael.
Yeah? Sorry? So it's typically a negative thing. The youthful people can do foolish things. At least that's in the case of Yosef. We'll see. Right. Okay, good. Okay, let's see. So now, pasuk Yud Gimel. Vayikru Yud Simlei Sam. So this brings us back to, as the Medrash points out, Yaakov, who tore his clothing when they brought him the news about Yosef, and now they're tearing their own clothing. As we mentioned, now it shifts and talks about them as having a group leader, and that's Yehuda, because now Yehuda is going to take charge and protect them as their leader, including Binyamin, for whom specifically he's going to act as the leader who's responsible for him. V'hu Adenu Sham. V'hu Adenu Sham is very important, because what does V'hu Adenu Sham mean? They're back in Yosef's house. He's still there. Why is he still there? Because he had a mishta with them. And they got drunk. And at dawn, as soon as it got light, they were sent away. He quickly chased after them. And they're right back where they started. V'hu Adenu Sham. So the pasuk is stressing, and Yosef, by the way, is looking for his gavia that he drinks with, and that he drank with at that very party. So it's bringing us right back to the party scene, and it points out that Yosef is still there, probably just rubbing his eyes or, slumped over, hungover, something like that. Right? That's the point. And we'll see it's very important because, I'll just point this out, but then we'll get to the psukim keheles, and then we'll understand, I think, a little more what's going on over here. The pasuk says that the pasuk stresses that they ate with Yosef batzaharayim, and as it says in Keheles, Iloch eretz shamalkech na'ar v'sarayich baboker yechelu. Woe to you, the eretz, that your sire is a nar and they eat in the morning. Ashreich eretz shamalkech ben chayrin who eat bigvur v'loy b'shsi. So it's not eating in the morning is a sign of immaturity. That you're a nar because you don't take your responsibilities seriously, to take care of your country. Some kings are narim and they don't care about responsibility, and they eat in the mornings and they drink. So they meet Yosef Batzaharayim. That means Yosef is no longer a nar. He's a responsible, mature adult who puts his country's concerns first, and then afterwards goes to eat. But then they actually do drink with him, and then comes the morning. So what's he doing there in the morning, looking for his gavia? Isn't he supposed to be he seems to be regressing here, so it's important. Okay, we'll see. But the pasuk is in the context of eating batzarayim as being significant, like it says in Keheles, because that's when a nar doesn't eat, and Yosef has to prove that he's no longer the nar that he was in the beginning of Vayeshev, right? So v'hu adenu sham, and after this drunken festival, and he's still there, and he's looking for his gavia that he drinks with. That sort of puts a question about whether he's, in fact, a mature king who's thinking about the concerns of his country and only eats late in the day, because here it's the morning and he's still there. Okay. Vayiplu lefanav arza. Fine. So now let's look at Keheles, and I think everything there will become, based on the psukim Keheles, everything will become clear, meaning to say we'll see what the significance is of Binyamin as the younger. Furthermore, whether Binyamin as a member of the group, or Binyamin as the younger brother as a member of the group, or the younger brother as an individual, and also the significance of Yosef still being there in the morning. I think everything will become clear in Keheles. Yeah. Okay. So in Keheles, it starts at the end of Perek Yud. These are the psukim we just referenced. It really starts a lot earlier, as usual, as usually the case, but for our purposes. Perek Yud Pasuk Tes Vav talks about those who don't know how to get back to the city. We spoke about this last week, I think, in the context of they're away from the city, but they're going to end up back in the city. Pasuk Tes Zayin is the pasuk we just mentioned, that Woe to the Arts, the king of which is the Nar. This is Perek Yud Pasuk Zayin. Woe to the land that its Sar eats in the morning. Fortunate is the land that the king is free. Remember, Yosef was a Nar Eved Ivri, and he had to overcome that. He's now a Ben Chorim, who eats ba'es. Ace is an important word in the Yosef story, right? That ace by Devaroi. Bigvur v'loy bashasi, and he doesn't drink. If he'd be lazy, then everything would fall apart. Okay, fine. And then Pasuk Chaf says not to curse the king because even in your mind, because the birds could carry your voice away, which the Medrash says means the birds are this kind of what's it called, divination. So that's like the nichush that the king could figure out those who are opposed to him. Okay, fine. Next, Perek Yud Aleph is clearly about Yosef. Send away your water send your lechem al pnei hamayim, because you'll find it after many days. Ten chelik l'shiva v'gam l'shmoina. That's the 7 years of soiva are coming, but you have to put away the bread because you need it for the 8th year. Ki lo seda ma yera. Right? Mm-hmm. And some of the other psukim in the Hemshech we also discussed in the beginning of Parashas Miketz. Now I want to go to Pasuk Zayin. This we spoke about last week. Umasai ka'or v'toiv la'einayim l'resis hashemesh. The pasuk says habayker or v'hanashim shulchu hema v'chamereim. And if you know the midrashim on that pasuk talk about habayker or, start talking about or is toiv, or is ki toiv, and one should only travel when it's or, because or is called toiv, and so on. So this pasuk umasai ka'or v'toiv la'einayim l'resis hashemesh. The fact that habayker or and they're on the way to go, that indicates that the or is pleasant and toiv. And when the or comes out, habayker or, everything is great. Everything is looking up for them. Metaphorically, it's like, oh, everything is great. Now it's illuminated, because remember, one of the other meaning of the fact that they're eating Batzaharayim was the fact that their nevuah is going to return, the clarity was going to return, because the pasuk in Micha and in Amos, in Micha it says, I think, or maybe it was in Amos, V'vesi Hashemesh Batzaharayim, or V'chashachti B'Shem Batzaharayim. I think in Amos and Micha, similar psukim, both of them about the loss of nevuah in the context of the brothers. The brothers lost their ability to see. And coming back to Yosef at Tzarayim means that, now vision is returning, ostensibly, because they're united with Yosef. And they're Baker Or, everything is looking great. But then Yosef quickly brings them back into the darkness of Mitzrayim. Okay, now if you look at the next psukim, from the next pasuk until the next perek through pasuk Zayin is all about the light, the of youth, as opposed to the choshech of zikna. So let's look at some of these psukim inside. A person should be happy, and he should remember the days of darkness. So maybe that means death, okay? Because it's going to be, I don't know, I think it means old age, because in that context in the Hemshech. Right? Okay, everyone knows this psukim. The youth should delight, but know that everything, he's going to pay for everything. When you're young, don't let anything bother you. It's fleeting. You have to enjoy your young age, and don't let kas get to you and ra, because it's not going to last for a long time. Okay, remember your creator in the days of your youth, before the days of evil come, before the sun gets dark, and the or, and the yerech, and the kachavim, etc., etc., etc. Everyone knows this, right? So it's very interesting. So first of all, we see this parallel between Kehelas and Miketz. And also Kehelas talks about, the next thing he wants to talk about, after he talks about the or, which parallels how Biker or is a simon, the or is a good thing, and everything is looking good, but then boom, they get drawn back to Mitzrayim. And Yosef starts telling him about Ra Tachas Toiva. You don't know what Toiv is. You don't know what Ra is. I'll tell you what Ra and Toiv is. And what does Kehelas want to talk about? The correct attitude to youth. And in Miketz, what happens is there's a question about the Katan, Binyamin. Maybe we should throw the Katan under the bus. Okay? Which is what happened to Yosef, and which has happened to Rachel. So let's think about. Okay, so let's just see what happened over here. So just to bring out the points, Yosef is busy with choshech, as those psukim say that the Nevi'im will plunge into choshech. His dream about the Shemesh V'Yechak Kachavim setting was a dream about choshech, which based on this pasuk in Keheles means it's a dream about old age. Because old age is called, in Perek Beis Pasuk Beis, the sun and the moon and the becoming dark. So Yosef's dream about everything being mishtachava is the world's plunged to darkness means I may be young, but I am being Mekayim, Keles Perek Beis, that says that the young person should remember when he's a boyre, he should be aware of the fact that the party's not going to go on forever. You should know that times are coming. And notice also, Perek Beis Pasuk Aleph says Zechor es boyre echa. Perek Yud Aleph Pasuk Ches says Yizkor es yemei ha-choshech. You should remember the days of the choshech. Meaning the days of the choshech, based on Perek Beis, are old age, when the sun sets. So remembering the boyre, for a youth to remember the boyre, is for him to remember the fact that even though he's young now, eventually it'll be choshech. Now, and parenthetically, and I'll pull this all together soon, but parenthetically in Perek Beis Pasuk Aleph, which says remember the boyre before the ra comes and before the choshech comes. So this business of boyre being associated with ra and choshech, yotzer boyre choshech asher boyre ra, and Ram says the Bereshis bar lekim bara is associated with choshech and ra. So the fact that the Bachar is being enjoined to remember his boyre goes along with the pasuk prior, which says remember the days of choshech. So basically, you have to have an awareness of ra and choshech in order for you to enjoy your youth. So smach bachar b'yaldusecha. You have to understand that now is not the time to be busy with weighty matters that adults are busy with, but only provided that you're aware of the fact that you're going to turn into an old person eventually. That's steht in Kehelis.
What, you can deal with weighty matters when you're older, but don't be incautious when you're younger?
Don't
Don't deal with weighty matters, but don't be incautious?
Right. Don't deal with weighty matters. You have to act as a young person acts. But the antidote to the dangers, the impetuousness of youth is to at the same time be aware of the fact that one day you're going to be like everyone else. Something like that. What?
Don't be too,
I don't know what the pshar is exactly. I don't know exactly what the pshar is, but this is what it says in Kes. I don't know. There's deep.
There's some kind of balance.
There's a balance, there's a tension, and there's deep things here which I don't understand. I want to point out the parallel themes, and then I'll tell you how I see it fitting in. And even with that, there's a lot more that I don't understand than I do understand. Parallel themes are, so the pasuk over there talks about the or is toiv, the choshech is ra. Yosef, who's dreaming about choshech, and in the case of the brothers who and he brings them back into the darkness of Mitzrayim, and says to them, Lo mishlamtem ro'ah tachas toiva, and he argues, you don't know what toiv is, you don't know what ra is. So presumably everyone thinks that toiv is or, and they think they're going to be neviim. That's called tzarayim, to see Hashem. And Yosef is like, you don't know anything, we don't know what we're seeing. Sometimes or is ra and choshech is toiv. Yeah, so those are the themes. I'm just showing. Okay, but
You're not neviim. If you're not, you do know.
They say that. Well, yeah, but Yosef wants you to sometimes dabble in not knowing.
He says it's choshech. You're not going to be nevuah. So now we have to deal with
Yeah.
with dreams.
Okay, so now I want to tell you how it happened over here in Yosef. So, okay, so back to Yosef's dream. So based on the pasuk in Keles Perek Beis Pasuk Beis that says that the old age is everything turning dark, that tells me a new meaning in Yosef's dream. He's like this: I'm a nar, so everyone thinks I'm a nar. I shouldn't be dreaming about being a king or whatever. But I am that bacher who is aware of the fact that the Yemei Hara are coming. Okay, so now I want to say like this. You know why he's aware that he's going to become old? Because he's with his brothers, and they're all older than him. So, okay, now. What does Keles tell the bacher to do? Don't let the raw bother you. Don't let anything you don't like, just reject it. Don't let it. Don't try to deal with it. Right? Isn't that what he's saying? Don't suffer anything. They represent the raw because they are the Yemei Hara, and therefore Yosef is like, I don't like you guys. You remind me of the fact that I'm going to become old. And it's important that you should remind me that I'm going to become old. But Lamaisa, at the same time, I'm supposed to use the reminder that I'm going to become old to avoid all the negative things of old age all those serious things that you guys are busy with, and I'm just going to laugh at you and make fun of it instead of saying, oh, maybe Taka, they're doing something right, because I want to be the young guy. He's doing the perfect Kehelis Bano. Yeah. The Basar Rami is like this. They're doing something that as an old person makes sense, but a young guy who wants to have fun, from his perspective, it's like, what are you doing? Why don't you think about it? Why are you rushing to judgment? Don't you? Because I don't want to be mature. I don't want to be like you. That's the whole reason why why he doesn't understand them, is because he doesn't want to be like them.
He's not behaving like he's born to do it. Remember that.
Yes. He remembers it so much that he's running away from them. That he's like, I see what happens when I become old. Because that's by definition the Basim Ra. No, Hasikas. That's how. He's like, look what they're doing. I don't want anything to do with that. Doing terrible things. Like, and they're saying back to him, no. Why don't you take a minute and understand what we're doing? Because I don't want to. Because I don't want to be like you. That's exactly it.
But then you just doesn't mean that you go tell everybody.
Yes, it does. It does. I think it does. It's like, don't let it affect you. He's like, if I would start thinking about it the way you do, then I'm going to become an old man like you, and that's the last thing I want to do is become an old man like you. So they stand as what he doesn't want to be. They are the Ra. They are the Yimei Hara. They are the Yimei HaChosheh. But the fact that they're older than him, it's enough. They represent on a psychic level, on a deep level, okay, for sensitive souls. Someone could be a minute older than him, like Leah was a moment older than Rachel. That's enough. She represents the fact that, as you know, whatever I have now is going to change. It's a constant reminder of that, and therefore, that frees me to be Smach Baruch B'Aldusecha, and frees me to be Havim Rabim Zarecha, because l'chayra, you do have to deal with things and be serious about them, because otherwise you're going to be a non-serious person. No, I'm serious because the very fact that I have you here reminding me that one day I'm going to be like you, that's enough. That's the balance that I need. What? Say that. So yeah, I hear young men are ksilim. I don't know, but they could be ksilim maybe because that's the point. Is like this. No, so getting back to the other point. The point is there's another point of view. Right? We said 3 points in the story, which is bet some 2 points. There's one point is that are they a group or are they individuals, and there's another whole theme about the kid. Mm-hmm. And Yosef originally acts like I'm an adult. We only eat batzarayim because I have important things to do the whole AM, and then he's back as a nar. So it all goes like this. The 2 questions of kids and are we a group really go together. Why? Because Kehelis advocates for a very cool thing. Kehelis advocates for a kid being a kid, but because he's aware of old age. So let's say the model of us all acting as a group is that we're all the same. What do you mean you're different than us? No, if we're all doing the right thing. And Yosef's like smart enough to know, or is going with this mahalach of Kehelis, that has a more nuanced approach to right and wrong. That by me bouncing off you, and you bouncing off me, we'll find an interesting kind of equilibrium that will maybe allow something more interesting to develop than if we'd all be doing the same thing. Okay, so and roughly that I think that maps onto Das Hashem. If we have and not having Das Hashem, if we have Das Hashem, we all think the same thing. What do you mean? What do you mean? I'll do this, you do that. You're dabbling in lack of perfect knowledge, and Kehelis dabbles in lack of perfect knowledge, which Yosef does, and Kehelis is like, if I dabble in lack of perfect knowledge, I'm going to do all sorts of weird things. No, I have an answer for that also. That I'll do this, you do that, I have this awareness of you, but I think I stand by what I said before, that means by definition that Klape the Bachar, the Zokin is Ra. He has to be Dibra, he has to make fun of the Zokin, because otherwise he's not being Mekayim. He has to look at the Zokin and say, that's the Ra, the old fogies, they do all stupid stuff, and everything they do is ridiculous, I would never do that. That's what Ra means, that's Dibra means, I wouldn't do what they're doing. What do you mean you wouldn't do what they're doing? Shouldn't you do what they're doing and become mature? No, I don't want to be mature. And if you try to convince me about what you're doing is right, you're trying to make me mature. I'm not trying to be mature.
Reject him.
Yeah, say that. I don't know, maybe. But it only works. It only works if he has older brothers. So that's the point. The point that I'm saying with Yosef and the brothers like this, that if one of them is with the brothers, if you're with everyone else, if he has older brothers, then he could act differently from his brothers. Right. And then he could act in a way that's not in unison with them. So they're saying, we didn't steal it, because they're assuming that we all act as one. Once again, Yosef is showing that, no, you don't all act as one. And maybe Binam is going to act differently than you because he's younger. So what are you going to do about that? Either you're going to say, this younger business, this immature business that the Kehelis people, whatever, Smach Bacher is not for us. We're not interested in this. We want mature people who love Das Hashem. Or Nevi'im, I don't know. Whatever, I don't know if that maps on it. We don't want these immature people. Or you're going to finally realize that you could have the Katan who has his own Mahalach because he's younger and he's different and he has youth and is different. and you could accept that it could work because he's together with you. So Yosef eats batzarayim, but once he's back with his brothers, now he's back to being a nar. Now he's right back to being a nar because he could be a nar as long as with his brothers. Okay, I want to end with one thing. In Yeshaya Perek Lamed, we spoke about this last week or the prior one. It's a parak we've been looking at a lot, and all those parakim over there. There, the parak Lamed from pasuk Tes and on, and talks about being mitame, the trofim, the tzipoi. Okay, and it talks about the rain. Shine. I don't have to go through all these pasukim again, but I just want to reference pasuk Chavav in parak Lamed pasuk Chavav, where it talks about the or halavonik, or acham, and or achayim yosayim, when Klal Yisrael is back together. That's that mizmar kofem zayin, where they all come back together, and that's when the true light will come. So the whole question with Yosef and the brothers is, what's the light? They're all into light, and he's like, no, it's going to become dark, and Taka they lose the nevuah. And then it's Sarayim, and then it's Or, and he's like, no, maybe we'll make it Choshech once again. Maybe you don't know what Raz, you don't know what Taiv is. And the final word on this is that the light, the true light is going to come. Okay? Now, like I said, just to repeat what I said, I don't know what this all means. Meaning to say, no, part of it I think we understood, like the idea of the tension, the idea of like there could be different people.
Sure.
In a model of a lo yadati, right? That makes sense. Yeah, no, but Dafka in a model of Kehelis kind of model, where like
his whole point is
right. His whole point is it doesn't have to.
It's dark.
It's dark, and it doesn't have to make sense for one person on its own. But through the dynamics of the group, it'll all work out for the best, even though no one individual is doing everything right. Huh? Yeah. No, Kehelis has a good point, Lamais, because otherwise, what's the point of youth? You see, you have to explain why there's such a thing as youth.
Yes. I mean,
No, not every youth is supposed to be an old man. It's a good argument. Every youth is supposed to be a serious old man. Not. So what's going on over here? On the other hand, you see, young people have a problem, and they have a mile. They have a problem that they're young, and they have a mile that they're young. So what do we do with that? So Kehelis found a good solution. He's like, be young, but be aware of the fact that there's old people.
And then each one has a benefit, and
right.
you learn each other's mile, and you can incorporate.